In the year 1219, Genghis Khan launched the first Mongol invasion of the West, leading a massive army of 200,000 warriors. His first target, the Khwarezmian Empire in Central Asia. The war began after the governor of Otrar, a key border city in the Khwarezmian Empire named Inalchuk, executed a Mongol trade caravan. When Genghis Khan heard the news, he was furious and swore to destroy the Khwarezmian Empire. After months of rapid marching, the Mongol army crossed into Khwarezmian territory. Genghis Khan split his forces into 4 separate armies to attack key cities simultaneously. One of the most important targets was Otrar, the same city where the massacre had occurred. The siege of Otrar was led by his sons Chagatai and Ogadai, who commanded a force of 50,000 troops. Otrar was a military stronghold. Its walls were high and well defended by 60,000 soldiers. The defenders knew they had no chance of winning a field battle against Mongol cavalry, so they chose to stay inside and hold out, hoping the Mongols would eventually retreat. After several failed assaults, Chagatai and Ogadai realized the city wouldn't fall easily. They decided to lay siege, surrounding Otrar and camping in the open plains. There, the Mongols cut down trees and prepared siege equipment like ladders and battering rams. The soldiers dined on dried beef, fermented mare's milk, and roasted whole lambs outside the city, tormenting the starving defenders who could only watch from the walls. After 5 months of siege, Otrar's food supplies ran out and morale crumbled. One commander, Karachar, who had clashed with Inalchuk, betrayed the city. Under the cover of night, he fled with several thousand of his men, leaving the gates open behind him. The Mongols seized the opportunity, stormed the city, and after a brutal fight, the defenders surrendered. But the Mongols wanted revenge. All surrendered soldiers were led outside the city and executed. The civilian population suffered a gruesome fate. Women and children were taken as slaves, artisans were spared, and the rest of the men were massacred. Otrar was thoroughly looted. As for the fleeing commander Karachar, he didn't escape. Mongol horsemen tracked him down and executed him. And Inalchuk, the governor who started it all by killing the Mongol merchants? Genghis Khan ordered him to be executed in the most brutal way. Molten silver was poured into his eyes and ears. His corpse was left on display for 3 days, a warning to all who dared cross the Mongols. In February of the year 1220, Genghis Khan arrived at the gates of Bukhara with the Mongol army's second major force, 80,000 strong, disciplined and ready for conquest. Bukhara, located in what is now modern-day Uzbekistan, was one of the most prosperous and cultured cities in Central Asia. While cities like London were still lined with muddy streets, Bukhara boasted stone-paved roads, majestic mosques, madrasas, and a vibrant intellectual life. It was a hub of Islamic learning, where scholars and imams held national conferences and guided thought across the Muslim world. When the Mongols surrounded the city, only 30,000 defenders stood between them and destruction. Genghis Khan sent envoys to the city, offering a simple, brutal choice: submit and live, resist and die. But the response was far from peaceful. Furious citizens, many of them devout Muslims, beat the envoys and nearly killed them. The city's commander, Timur Malik, also referred to as Cheshly Khan, was a man of principle. He intervened, declaring that even in war, envoys should not be harmed, and personally ensured the Mongol messengers were safely escorted back to their camp. But when the battered envoys returned, they exaggerated the insults. "They spat on your name," they told the Khan. "They cursed you. They do not fear you." Genghis Khan's fury boiled over. He gave the order to attack. The Mongols launched a full-scale assault. Waves of cavalry and infantry charged the city walls like a rising tide. The defenders rained down arrows, cutting down the front lines, but the enemy just kept coming. Unbeknownst to them, the soldiers falling first weren't Mongols at all. Genghis Khan had dressed captured prisoners in Mongol uniforms, sending them to die at the front to wear down the defense. He called them the Heavenly Army. Behind them came the siege engineers. The Mongols had brought powerful trebuchets and siege towers. Every time a massive stone struck the city walls, chunks of brick exploded. The sound alone struck fear into the hearts of the defenders. The psychological warfare was just as brutal as the physical siege. On the third night, a Turkic general within Bukhara lost his nerve. He fled the city under cover of darkness with a group of cavalry, aiming to escape across the Amu Darya River. But the Mongols gave chase. None made it across. This betrayal shattered the morale of the city. The very next morning, Bukhara's religious leaders, scholars, and elders came out with a white flag. They surrendered the city and offered 200,000 gold dinars in exchange for mercy. Genghis Khan accepted. The Mongols entered the outer city without resistance. But Timur Malik and over 400 loyal soldiers refused to surrender. They withdrew to the inner citadel, choosing to fight to the death. The battle was brutal and short. The Mongols stormed the inner fortress. Every single defender was killed. Timur Malik, wounded and surrounded, chose to die on his own terms. He took his own life, refusing to fall into enemy hands. Genghis Khan, impressed by his courage and honor, ordered that Malik be buried with dignity according to local Islamic customs. But this moment of respect didn't stop what happened next. When the Mongols took the inner city, they unleashed a massacre. Over 30,000 residents were killed. No mercy was shown. The surviving population was expelled from the city. Surrendered soldiers and strong men were sorted out, many of them forced into the Mongol army as arrow fodder, soldiers meant to absorb enemy attacks in future battles. Then came the looting. Bukhara's once glorious mosques, homes, libraries, and schools were plundered. The Mongols burned much of the city to the ground, turning one of the Islamic world's most brilliant centers of culture into little more than ashes and rubble. This was not just conquest, it was a warning. Genghis Khan had sent his message to the Khwarezmian Empire, to the Islamic world, and to anyone else who might dare defy him. Defy me, and this is your fate. In May of 1220, the Mongol army arrived at the gates of Samarkand, the capital of the Khwarezmian Empire. Today, Samarkand is the second largest city in Uzbekistan, but in the 13th century, it was the largest and most prosperous city in Central Asia, with a population of around 600,000. At that same time, London had fewer than 200,000 residents. As the Mongols approached, Shah Muhammad, the king of the Khwarezmian Empire, fled in panic, taking his son Jalal ad-Din with him, not because he cared deeply for his son, but because he feared Jalal might stay behind and seize power in his absence. Shah Muhammad had no intention of becoming a powerless figurehead like Emperor Xuanzong of Tang. He was addicted to power, and he knew it. Though the king ran away, he left behind a massive garrison, 110,000 troops, and 20 war elephants to defend the city. On the Mongol side, the forces were even larger. After the fall of Otrar, Genghis Khan was joined by his sons, Chagatai and Ogedei, bringing reinforcements. The Mongols also made use of captured prisoners dressed as soldiers, boosting their army's size to around 150,000. By the third day of the siege, the Mongols launched their assault. The city's defenders sent out 5,000 Tajik cavalry to meet them in open battle. That was a mistake. The Mongols, masters of deception, pretended to retreat, luring the Tajik cavalry into the open. Suddenly, Mongol ambush units struck from all sides. The Tajik force was completely wiped out. Clearly, they hadn't studied Sun Tzu. The Mongols pressed the siege further, using catapults to launch not only stones but also early gunpowder bombs at the walls. Yes, you heard that right. Gunpowder. The Mongols had captured Chinese engineers and craftsmen during earlier wars with the Jin and Western Xia, and they brought gunpowder technology westward. Instead of using it for fireworks, the Mongols weaponized it. They packed clay or metal pots with explosive powder and launched them into enemy positions. The blasts were devastating. This marked one of the earliest introductions of gunpowder to Central Asia and later Europe, eventually paving the way for weapons like the Maxim gun centuries later. By the fourth day, the defenders of Samarkand played their final card. 20 war elephants, each carrying archers and driven by handlers. Tens of thousands of foot soldiers followed behind in formation. These elephants charged forward like medieval tanks. The Mongols, seeing elephants for the first time, were momentarily stunned. But under Genghis Khan's command, the Mongol cavalry quickly adapted. They circled around the elephants and fired barrages of arrows from the flanks. With their massive size, the elephants were easy targets. Wounded and panicked, they turned back and trampled their own troops, causing chaos among the Khwarezmian lines. The Mongol horsemen then swept in and destroyed the remaining infantry. Only a few survivors managed to retreat back into the city. On the fifth day, Samarkand's nobles and officials opened the gates and surrendered. The Mongol army poured into the city. However, the inner citadel was still holding out. On the sixth day, the Mongols broke through. All the soldiers inside were slaughtered. The civilians who had taken shelter were also massacred. Because both sides had used flaming oil bombs, much of Samarkand was burned to the ground. In just 6 days, the largest city in Central Asia had fallen.